Stop wasting time on your UI designs and start designing smarter with these 6 time-saving tips. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Ahmed and I've been a UX designer full-time for the last 3 years, and let's get started. So the first step I have for you is, if you are working on a web application for alignment and organizing purposes, I want you to actually have a layout, grid, column, rows. Now you might not be using Figma. I'm gonna show you how it works in this application. And let's say we delete it, we get here, we have a grid, and I move it for column, and for web it's 12 columns, 96 margins left and right, and this lets me organize my designs a lot more easier. When it comes to mobile applications, I would advise though is using the ruler functionality. On Figma it is with Shift R, you open and close it. And what you want to do is, you might even want to do a third one where it is on the middle of a screen. So it should be around here, and this is how you would go on to design the content, so that you can really organize your information a lot better and you can minimize what is on the screen. The second tip I have for you is to actually using blocks when it comes to measuring spacing. So one problem you will run into is, just like the alignment problem, once you have, let's say, a few screens and you realize the spacing between them is not consistent, you will spend a lot of time going through each screen and making them the same. And if you are working on a full production project, chances are you are going to be working on 30, 40, 50 screens. So it really becomes a death by 1,000 cuts. So making sure you have a kind of a spacing system at the beginning is great. And the best way I learned to do this is actually from another YouTuber called Malavik, where what he does is he basically creates his spacing blocks and he calls them red blocks. And usual spacing he has is kind of 8, 16, then we can go 24, then we can go 32, and then we can go 48. This works very well for mobile. For web you might need a lot more extra, but what he does is, what you do is, once you begin actually, let's say, designing certain elements and you want to space them, you copy and paste these around all the time just to make sure the spacing works. So here is 32 pixels, that's great. The distance between this element and this element should also be 32. And you really use these to check your work, especially the initial 4 to 5 screens, where the rest of the screens will actually become a variant of, so that the spacing is very consistent, so that you save a lot of time later on. The next step I will show you will sound very dumb, but I did it actually the first year of my design, and maybe you do it too and you should stop. And the mistake most beginner designers make is, when they are actually designing a screen, and I'm gonna remove this, and they, let's say, wanna make some kind of a card, or let's say some kind of an input field, they press F and they create something on its own entirely without copying and pasting certain things. So they, let's say, do it 48 pixel height, and then they fill it with a color, and then what they do is they basically get the same color, switch it, and then get this color. The problem with this is that the more things you have to recreate, the chances of you making a slip up or a mistake increases. So what you do is, once you have certain elements, almost every other element should be basically some sort of a variation of that element with the help of copy and paste and then modification. What I mean by this is, if a beginner designer just creates an element for the first time here, what an experienced designer would do is, this is a filter element, but its height is 44 pixels, which is according to what I need. So I need to transform this thing into an input field, and there we go. And that would be email, and then they would check, okay, the alignment here is good, the color is good, the spacing is good, the height is according to great for mobile because I had already measured its height for this filter element, so it will work for the input as well, and voila. So what you are trying to really do is to limit the amount of elements that you are creating from scratch so you don't introduce new errors. So the next step is to never ever begin a UI high fidelity design with colors. You do not want to begin and pick colors where, let's say you copy this and then you go on and I'm like, nope, instead of this I want the green color to be the base. I want to move much more around, let's say here. I want this to be much more green. And then you update the background as well to match it. The problem is the color and the typography is much more the sizzle of the end journey. And even though they are important, they require a lot more variations for you to try out. So you gotta try out at least 10 different things to find your ideal color system. While you are doing this, the purpose of the UI design here is to solve a problem, and before you move on to solve the problem, having the right color and typography won't actually make things a lot easier. So for color, my number one tip for you is to just use a grayscale. So a grayscale has good enough range in color, so I'm gonna show you that you know different elements have different colors. So some of them will be bolder, some of them will be less bolder. So if I move here, so this gray we have on the border, we know in high fidelity it will have to be a lot more, let's say, lighter than the actual gray we use for the type here. So you are able to communicate which elements are lighter or darker than the others, but because it's grayscale, you are not losing a lot of time picking the best color. So it is a good alternative instead of just using black, or instead of using just different colors and find the best one. Grayscale will give you the most flexibility, and it will give you the easiest way that you can get started and be happy about what you are designing. So the next step I have for you is when it comes to typography, just like colors, I said you need to simplify it. So you want to use one font, and that should be either Roboto or let's say Arial or Helvetica, that are very popular, old, boring looking fonts. And you really want to do this, so I will just move this entire screen into Helvetica, and then I will just copy and do other stuff. But the last tip I have for you is that you need to install the right plugins in the design application you use to reduce the amount of context switch you have to do. For example, if you are designing a UI screen and you need an image, you should not be going to, let's say, Pixabay or Unsplash.com to fetch the image, download and come back to your design application, because each time you change, let's say, the environment you are working in, it is causing friction, and that might be the time when you want to take a break or, let's say, scroll social media. So you want everything in only the place you are working in. So I will show you how to install these 3 plugins that I use most often on Figma, and you can search them for the design tools that you use. So to install the plugins on Figma, what we are going to do is we are gonna go to Figma homepage, figma.com, and then I'm going to go to the community here, and I am gonna write the first plugin you will need, which is Unsplash. This is to find the right stock images for your, let's say, application. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just pick the plugins here, and I want you to install this one. I want you to press on try it out, and then the next one I want you to try is feather icons. So you will always have this icon set to work on your applications. I want you to try it out as well. And then the last one is lorem ipsum for dummy text. So I want you to actually try out this one as well. So the fourth one here. Once you actually have these installed and you come back, you will be around here, and if I need, let's say, a particular image, I can just do command / and I can write unsplash, and everything is here for me. Let's say I want a picture on inside this frame, I want it to be abstract, I can put it here. I don't need to leave the application. And same is for adding new icons. I can just do feather icons, and I can fetch my icons here. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, you will really love this video about fundamentals of UI design so that you can get better in your craft.